Well, hello friends. It is a gorgeous day and I am outside planting some of my remaining containers I have. And these are the containers that are across my driveway. I used to call this Grandma's flower bed because this was where Grandma, who used to live here before me, always had a flower bed. And I like it because you can see it across from the kitchen window as you're at the kitchen doing dishes, at the sink or anything, which I'm at that sink a lot, looking out the window over to here. I've changed the bed a lot since Grandma had it, but I still have a flower bed here. And this year I'm adding containers in a way I haven't done. Usually in the past I've had very small containers here, which I love antique urns. I love cast iron urns, but the one drawback of them is they don't hold a lot of soil. So you can't plant a lot of annuals or a lot of blooming things. They just don't work for that. So these containers are just big box store concrete containers. They were really, really reasonable. I've had them for a few years because I used to have them at the end of my driveway. And then for the last few years, I haven't been using them, waiting for the right spot. And this is the right spot. What's great is they hold a lot of soil, which means I can finally put in some more fun things across the driveway. So I'm actually gonna use trellises. I have some pyramid style trellises that I usually put Christmas lights on and use them at Christmas outdoors. But this year I'm actually gonna use them for what they're intended. And I am going to put them in and have Mandevilla growing on them. I have some different annuals to put around them. And I wanna walk you through the annuals I'm gonna use first, why I'm excited about them. They still hold true to my near and dear to my heart of foliage and texture and drama in that leaf, but they also have blooms. So first, the space itself butts up to some very old arborvitae. They've been here since probably the 1970s about, or actually 1960s. And so they're very tall and it's just a nice big green backdrop. This is to the east, which means that morning sun is really shielded here. So these pots only get about 5 hours of sun a day. So I'm doing kind of a mix of some partial sun to sun loving plants. And you can see right now the allium, the spring blooming allium are blooming. We have lots of gladiators, some I think purple sensation, Mount Everest in there. And they're just kind of having fun. And what I like about this bed, against that green backdrop of the trees, color like the allium really pop out. So let's look at the plants I'm gonna plant in these and kind of why I'm excited about these. So the first thing, each one is gonna get a Mandevilla. Now for this Mandevilla, you're gonna say, Caleb, that's not color, but it is blooming. I'm using white Mandevilla, but I have a very specific reason. Against this green backdrop, white almost glows both day and night. And I would say night especially. The white really pops out. To bring out that white even more, I'm really going to complement it with the Angel Wings Senecio. I really love these. You have to have the right spot, I find. They like that partial sun with some good bright light, but not direct heat of the sun. And so this is that great spot. It kind of has a soft texture, but these get really large with beautiful foliage. For some more blooms, I'm gonna go along with the white and just do some simple white lobelia. I love some of the white lobelia, and I think it does so well just draping over the edge, and it will complement with a small white flower, the Mandevilla above it. I'm also gonna do some, I love salvia, and I love the names they come up with for these, but this is the Rock and Play in the Blues. What I like about this is it will get tall, it has dark foliage with some darker stems, but then beautiful deep purple flowers. And I'm gonna put this towards the back of the container so it really stands out and grows back behind all the white Mandevilla. And then I'm gonna also add some beautiful simple annuals that will just kind of more drape. These like partial sun, and that's what I like about them. They're easy to take cuttings of and start new plants if you want to, or take them in as a house plant even. And what's nice is they'll kind of bring in that purple pink color with the salvia. They'll also play in with the tones of white. So I think this will all be a nice mixture for all three of these pots. So along with just traditional organic potting soil that I love to use from Espoma, which I really want to make sure, since these are in containers, they drain well. You want them to hold on to the moisture as you water it, but you don't want them to be clogged with moisture or for them to sit. That started with making sure the pots had good drainage. I checked the holes on the bottom, they had good drainage. I covered those holes to make sure the soil would not seep out, but the water would. And then I filled them with good potting soil. Now, these are such large containers that you can totally cut down the cost by filling them about 1/3 of the way with a hardwood mulch that isn't treated or anything. And that can be light, but still allow good drainage. And then the rest of the way with potting soil. I had enough potting soil, so I just filled them with potting soil. But now, since I'm doing some blooming things, I'm not only gonna use Biotone, which you know I love biotone, but I'm also gonna mix in with this whole some flower tone. Now the reason I like flower tone is, again, this is a good organic way to make sure your annual flowers, but also any flower, is just boosted for more of that flower performance, that bloom performance that we want, which means it has a good amount of phosphorus in it. That's gonna be the blooming ingredient we want to make sure. So I'm gonna mix both flower tone and biotone right into the hole as I'm planting the Mandevilla and the lobelia. And so I wanna make sure I get a nice deep hole here for this Mandevilla. And I did look for one that was a little bit bigger, only because this is across the driveway. It's very impactful when you drive in, and I just want to be able to see it right away. So I'm gonna make sure I take it out, look at how the roots are. I always like to, if I need to, I will take apart that root a little bit just so it kind of gets going. And then, since it's such nice potting soil, I'm just gonna pop it right there in the middle. And I'm starting with my center piece here because it's gonna be the tallest. It needs to be right in the center. And then I can plant everything else around it. And in this instance, I am gonna make sure it's very full. I wanna make sure this is gonna be ready to go, very full, that summer looking annual. Now, I am going to untangle these two, mostly because I wanna be able to put them on the trellises I'm using. And just to make sure to see how the plants are going to fall around it, I'm gonna take this off and add the trellis now before I keep planting the annuals. I fit the trellis on and I slowly have been wrapping around the Mandevilla so it can actually just get started. Mandevilla are very easy to find anymore, and that's because they're so easy. So many people like them because they adapt to different areas really well. Even though they're more of a tropical, they can do well with full sun, obviously, but they do well with some partial sun too. So if they don't quite get that full 6 hours, I find they still do really well. They also are just an easy bloomer. You don't really have to worry too much about them. They take care of themselves, other than, of course, the normal watering. So now I'm starting to check on all my annuals, and when it's a bigger pot like this, I like to somewhat place them around just to kind of make sure I like the placement, make sure it's going to fit how I want them. This lobelia needs water. We're keeping it real here, friends, and just seeing. Now, like I said, some of the salvia, it's gonna get big. So I'm placing it in the back because it's not one that will cascade down or drape over. And I don't always adhere to the whole thriller, filler, spiller. It works in some cases, but that doesn't mean it's always perfect. You don't have to follow all those rules. Just do what works for you. And even ones like this. So look how nice and growing this is. If you can see here, there are many plants within this, many starts. You can take this apart. So one, if you just want to save money, which I know, but you know what? Growing up, this was the only way mom could sometimes plant as many plants as we planted. You can just take them apart on certain annuals, not all of them, and you can easily then have 2 for 1. So don't be scared of doing things like this. It will kind of separate them out, give you a little bit more room that way, a little bit more definition. So I'm gonna work in, kind of get these planted, and we'll move on. So number 1 is done. And remember, things will change here. So the allium eventually right here will be going away. The foliage down by the ground will be going away, but the boxwood will continue to shine. And what I'm excited about is when it grows up and has white blooms all over it. But you already are noticing how that beautiful senecio, the angel wing senecio, also have that glowing effect. They have that silvery glowing effect. So as this grows, we're gonna have the salvia pop out back behind. We'll get nice and tall. We'll have the lobelia be trailing in front. And it will all just really come together. So I have 2 more containers to do. So I'm gonna set this up, we're gonna do them, and soon it'll be done. So I'm finished up with all 3, and I just had to show you here at the end. I was taking apart the annuals in front. I thought I was gonna have to use 2 per pot. I used 1, and I've been splitting them into 3. Even this one small little piece, if you look, it has a nice root on it. So I've been splitting them into 3 and then putting them on. either side of the lobelia, not just in the front center. That to me is what's great when you can figure out ways, and you're probably thinking, well, it knocks it back a size, doesn't it? Or it's gonna take longer to really get going. It really won't. Certain annuals are so vigorous in their growth that really once that beautiful warmth of spring, summer hits, a lot of these things are just gonna take off about the same rate, no matter if you start with smaller starts or larger ones. And the thing is, I always start with smaller starts. I don't get really any annual over a 4-inch. Sometimes I go smaller than a 4-inch, because I find for me, they all get to the same size eventually. And I find no use in overspending when everything's gonna get large in about the same time. It's kind of the same with tomato plants. I've said this before. You see those tomato plants, they're in multiple gallon size containers. If you plant one of those and you plant a small tomato seedling, you're gonna get tomatoes about the same time on both plants. Even if they have tomatoes on them, they take forever to ripen, and they're really never quite as early as you think. Same thing with annuals. Start with the smaller starts and you're still gonna get this overabundant, beautiful annual. So now that I'm done, this is the exciting part where you can just watch them grow, and I'm excited to be able to actually take you along on that. So always be checking in on my daily stories. Maybe I'll do a follow-up video. I usually do tours at some point, kind of showing how things are growing. And that's what I'll show you on these, is how they're filling in, what is doing really well, what isn't. Because every year on things like this, I'm gonna pick different annuals. I like to experiment and see what I like. Some years I go with something because it just always does well. Mandevilla I've done in the past. I haven't done them for a few years, but I'm excited to use them again because they're just easy. So this is kind of in a fun area too, where if you look behind me, you see lots of blooming things right now at the beginning of my driveway. There's lots of cat's pajamas, nepeta. There's lots of Russian sage coming, millennium allium. All that flows together, and I like a cohesive look color-wise and a cohesive palette color-wise in my yard. So we have lots of blues and purples, sage colors, along with that dusty white color like the senecio, the angel wings on this. So I'm kind of going with that same thing all throughout my yard and in all my containers. The biggest thing now will be to make sure I am watering these all throughout the summer, especially when you get into the heat, possibly dry or drought times of summer. These are gonna need even watering. So most likely sometimes when I get into the heat of summer, it's every other day, if not every day if we're having really dry wind, which sometimes we do from the south. But they should still flourish, especially with all that good fertilizer I put in, with the good potting soil. All that will be essential to make sure they do well. So I hope you gain some excitement, some inspiration, and if you're a regular follower, I hope you noticed that I went out of my normal boundaries and did some different things. The Mandevilla, I don't usually do. I usually do my agave, my aloe, my succulents. This is a lot, you know, more unique, more traditional for some, but more different for me. So I'm excited to share that with you. If you enjoyed this, share the video around so others can see how exciting it is too. Check my website, wyseguy.com, for tips, for tricks, and for all my recipes. Until next time, go garden. You'll be glad.